Hi, I'm Ryan West, and we're at Dungeon Beach in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and today we've been working on a mix for the White Lines remix by Chonzo Darrow. Now, we've made a lot of small moves in this mix. We've done some compression and some EQing, and we've added effects, and we've done some spatializing and panning, and all kinds of like little nuanced stuff that make a mix come together. But sometimes what can make a mix really come together, really sound like it belongs on the radio, is what you do on your master output or your two-bus mix. In this case, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and reach for the grand channel on my mix bus. Now, the reason why I'm going for this is because it's got two very important things on it: compression and EQ, and you can change the way it's configured in this particular plugin. In this instance, I'm going to put the compressor before the EQ because I want to compress the program material just as it is in the mix and get it to glue together just a little bit more. And I'm going to use the EQ to make up for some deficiencies or add something, a little extra voodoo in the mix. But first, let's address the compression. On this particular plugin, there's a saturation knob. In the default setting, it's set to normal. I don't want any saturation at all, so I'm going to turn that down to clean. So bye-bye saturation, you're awesome, but I don't need you right now. Also in the same section of this plugin is the low cut control. It operates in two different modes. It operates in input mode, and in that case, the low cut knob will simply just cut everything below the frequency that you select. But in detector mode, what it does is it allows the compressor to not reach its threshold if anything below the frequency that you set reaches that threshold first. So basically, it's not going to react with compression to the frequencies that are below where you set that knob. Now that's important because in this song, some of the bass frequencies for the 808 drums and the actual bass sound are kind of high energy, and they have to be because that's the type of song that it is. So I don't want my compressor to react to that at all. I just want my compressor to work on the program material that's above a certain point. So I'm going to switch that into detector mode, and then I'm going to probably sweep this up to about 80 or 90 hertz. Now I can go back and adjust this once I start hearing the compression work, and if I'm noticing that it's reacting to the low frequency stuff, to the bass too much, I can even sweep that higher. And actually I think I'm going to put it right at about 90 hertz. I think it's a good place to start. On a mix, I want to preserve transients. I don't want to squash those initial transients. I'm really just trying to smooth the entire thing. So naturally, I'm going to go with either a medium or a slow attack time. In this case, I think I'm going to go with a slow attack time. I want to preserve those transients. I really want to make sure that they're coming through. But I also want to make sure that the compressor is releasing kind of right away, because I don't want like this big pumping action on my mix. I want it to just sort of like grab just a little bit and then let go, because we're not going to get a lot of compression here. That's not the idea. We're just trying to smooth the mix out a little bit. So with this kind of compressor, it is definitely a smooth sounding compressor. And once you start making it compress too hard, you can really hear it. That's not what we're after either. We want gentle compression while the transient's coming through and releasing rather quickly. So I'm going to set this to a fast release time. I'm going to start raising my gain reduction knob until I'm getting a couple dB worth of gain reduction. And of course, I'm just going to use my ears. I'm going to listen. I'm going to set it where it sounds good, not where the meters are. I don't care about the numbers. I care about how it sounds. That's the key. I think it sounds good on a pretty gentle setting. I mean, really at the highest peaks, I'm only getting about 2 dB worth of gain reduction, and that's enough, because once I raise it above that, I really started to hear the compression work, and that's not what I want to do. I just want some gentle level control. Now, in the process of getting a little bit of gain reduction, I lost a little bit of gain. I want to make that up, so I'm going to watch my meters, and I'm going to adjust the gain control up until I've got a sufficient amount of gain coming out of the outside of this plugin. But I have to remember not to go too far, because I'm also going to add a little bit of EQ after this. And that's going to add gain as well. So I want to preserve headroom in this mix for the mastering process. I don't really need to nail it so loud right now. I just want to make sure that I have enough gain for the mastering engineer to work with. So let's do that. I think that's pretty good. So let's listen to what we did with our compressor here. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in bypass, and this time I'm not gonna level match it. I'm just gonna go ahead and let that apparent volume change happen because I am interested in, giving the song a lift. So that's the entire idea of using this sort of processing. If we were doing this on a single channel or on a bus insert for a group of instruments, I'd want to gain match it so I can really hear just the compression. But in this case, I think I've got just what I want. So we're gonna go ahead and put it in bypass, listen for a couple of bars, and then I'll put it right back in and we can hear what it's doing. And that's what I call a lift. It brought the whole mix up in intensity just a little bit. The kind of moves that you're making here on your tube bus are gonna be subtle ones, but they add up because what we're gonna do next is we're gonna add something that's gonna give it yet another lift. And that's gonna be to maybe add a little bit of shine in on the EQ and address the low mid range. I think maybe we could pull out just a little bit of, it's not really mud, but it's just a little bit of low mid gain where I think could just lose a dB or two. So I'm gonna address that first. I'm gonna put this particular band into cut mode and somewhat narrow bandwidth. And I'm gonna set this around 220. And I'm just gonna see what that sounds like. I'm gonna start pulling out gain. I'm gonna go too far. I'm gonna go extreme and then I'm gonna back it off to where I think it's the right place. I want this in peak mode, not in shelf. I just wanna reduce that narrow bandwidth, not everything that's below it. So listen along as I reduce the gain at 220 Hertz. Okay, you saw that I decided that 220 was a little bit low. I didn't really want to cut that frequency. When I started cutting that, I realized I was losing something I really wanted to keep. When I adjusted it up to 270 and then made the gain reduction a little bit more extreme, I could tell that was really closer to the center of the frequency that I was looking for. Now this isn't a big move. This is very subtle. It's just a little bit. I was just trying to clean up that low mid-range just a touch. One of the things I'm going to try is to add a little bit of sheen back into this mix after the compression circuit. So I'm going to go ahead to this high band over here. And I'm going to select, let's try 12.5K first. And I'm just going to give it a nice wide bandwidth. Most of the time when I'm adding gain, I want to have a nice wide bandwidth. Why? Because it just sounds more natural. If you add gain at a narrow bandwidth, it can start to sound really kind of weird, funky, plasticky, too brittle, too quickly. So for a nice gentle curve, I'm going to give it a nice wide bandwidth. Set it about 7.5 there. I'm going to play it back again, add probably too much, and then back it off to where I think is tasteful. Check it out. Again, just a really subtle move. I'm really just contouring this. You're not going to hear a huge difference, but you will hear it once I bypass this EQ and then play it again, and then halfway through that loop, I'm going to add that EQ back in, and I think you're going to hear the difference. It's exactly what it needs to be. I mean, I addressed my EQ issues in the mix for the most part, but this is one last opportunity for me in my mix just to shape it just a little bit more, to contour it a little bit differently. Now we have an opportunity to give your mix another lift before it goes to mastering. Remember, we're not trying to smash it. We're trying to make it exciting. I've got a plugin here that I use frequently called the Drawmer S73. It's got some interesting presets on it, but I'm going to just choose a style here because I want to adjust this the way that I'd like it to be. As I want to add just a little bit more punch to this mix. So I'm going to try this punch preset, and it's under the bass control style section. I'm going to turn the amount all the way down. I'm just going to play this back, and I'm going to start adding the amount until I find it tasteful, until I think it's giving the mix a lift. So let's take a listen. I'm going to play it back and start adding in the amount. I think that gave us like another slight lift. Remember, this is not big moves here. This is just about contouring it, shaping it a little bit further, doing things to enhance, make it more exciting. So let's listen to it in bypass first and then halfway again through the loop. We're going to put this back in and see if it's doing what we want. Yeah, man, I think that gave it an extra lift. If you notice too, while I was listening back to this, I was adjusting the output gain to make sure that I wasn't clipping my output here. And I was also adjusting the wet-dry mix control. I had it all the way over to the wet, and it was a little bit too much, so I backed it down to dry, and then I started adding it back in until it felt right. And I made the balance between the amount of the effect and the blend of the mix, wet and dry, worked for me. And I think we've achieved something here. What I'd like to do is go ahead and bypass both the Summit Grand Channel and the Drawmer, listen to the mix the way it was before we did anything on the 2-bus, and decide whether or not we achieved getting a nice lift from these 2 plugins on our mix bus. I think it definitely did that. You know, what I was hoping not to do was to destroy the dynamics that were in my mix. I just wanted to give it more energy, and that's what we did here. Please go ahead and try this or any other combination of these plugins. You might even try putting the Drawmer before the Summit Grand Channel and see how that works out. There's no rules in this stuff. Experiment, have fun, just make sure your mix sounds great and exciting. Good luck.